Okay, welcome today. So the Biochemical Society and Portland Press are pleased to welcome you to this webinar. This is part of the Biochemistry Focus webinar series. Topics in this series include different research areas in the molecular biosciences, as well as more practical or skills-based sessions to support your career development. So each webinar will give you the opportunity to ask plenty of questions via text, and we do welcome suggestions for future topics and speakers to feature in our webinar series. So please see the website for more details. So my name is Ben. I'm a research associate at the University of Manchester. I'm also a member of the Early Career Advisory Panel with Biochemical Society, and I'll be chairing today's webinar. So today's webinar is titled Exploring Alternative Careers, Research Adjacent, Exploring Alternative Pathways, Research Adjacent Careers, and is part of our dedicated early career research program of webinars. So this session will showcase alternative research career options outside of the lab or outside of traditional academic research, with our invited speakers discussing their move away from roles in academic research and sharing their experiences of working in a research adjacent field. So before I hand over to our first speaker, I'd like to mention that questions will be asked at the end of the webinar, but please do feel free to send in your questions during the talks as they come to mind. If you have a question, please type it into the question box as shown in the image on the screen. Please state in who your question is for, if it's quite specific to a particular speaker. And we will try to answer as many of these at the end. So our first speaker today is Marjorie Fournier, who's the facility manager at the Advanced Proteomics facility at the Department of Biochemistry at the University of Oxford. So after obtaining a PhD in molecular microbiology and biotechnology from the University of Aix-Marseille in France, Marjorie joined the Proteomics Center of the Stowers Institute for Medical Research in Kansas City in the USA to gain expertise into shotgun proteomics technologies. Later, she was appointed a Marie Curie Incoming Fellow to join the Institute of Genetics and Molecular Biology in Strasbourg, France, where she developed and managed the proteomics facility, while also conducting research focused on understanding the role of the post-translational modification lysine acetylation in human cells. Marjorie pursued this line of research at the Sir William Dunn School of Pathology before taking on her current role, where she supports research and training in the field of mass spec-based proteomics for scientists all across and outside the University of Oxford and industry. So I'd like to hand over to Marjorie, who will take us through. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Perfect. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ben, for the introduction. So my name is Marjorie, and I'm a manager of a research facility called the Advanced Proteomics Facility, and we are based in the Department of Biochemistry of the University of Oxford. So it's a great pleasure being with you today, and for this early career seminar, I just wanted to give you a brief outline of my presentation, starting off what has been my professional path and how I ended up as a manager of a research facility, but also what is my current role at the facility, the skills required to fit into this role, and but also some challenges and advice that I learned along this journey ended up into this role. So starting with my career path, which I would say was maybe traditional academic path, starting with the PhD in France, where I grew up. Can you see my screen? In France, where I grew up, so I was trained as a microbiologist, and so I did my PhD in a lab of bioenergetics and protein engineering, and this is part of the National Research Center of France. And also during that time, I got lucky enough to get this government fellowship to do my PhD. So this lab was specialized in basically on anaerobacteria, and we looked into how the metabolic capabilities of these bacteria to decontaminate soil, but my project was specifically focused on oxidative stress response. And for that, I used both different types of techniques, mostly proteomics and genetics. And I must say I had a very good supervisor, Professor Dola, who gave me all the space and time to explore different methods. And I started to be extremely interested in proteomics. First reason being is working with anaerobic bacteria and trying to make mutants. Took me 6 months basically to obtain like a double mutant. So I started to look into proteomics just to look at the function of those enzymes involved in this oxidative stress response. And I was really much amazed on, how this such technology will allow to map all the proteomes and get all the functional insights of enzyme into 3-4 weeks of time response. So I decided to gain expertise into mass spectrometry and proteomics at that time, also knowing that I was not sure whether I would pursue in academia or go to industry, and I know that getting those skills will help me to go both directions. And so to gain expertise into mass spec proteomics-based proteomics, I joined the Proteomics Center led by Michael Washburn, and this is at the Star Wars Institute for Medical Research at Kansas City. And reason being, so Mike was a pioneer in doing this shotgun proteomics, which was very different from what I did during my PhD, which was a bit at the early age of proteomics doing gel and a bit of mass spectrometry. So this was really cutting edge for me, and I decided to go to the birthplace of shotgun proteomics. And so it was a long way far from Provence, ended up in the Midwest of the States, but was very interesting as well. And from there, so I used yeast. I evolved as well as organisms from bacteria to yeast, and they were easy to go, and we managed to do all these omics screening. So from there, I learned really mass specs, proteomics, and all this large-scale data analysis from that. It was also, a big cultural shock, but this move was extremely rewarding professionally and personally as well. And after 4 years spent in Mike's lab, I decided I really wanted to pursue on this line research, especially looking at post-translational mechanism, and also make use of this expertise for other research groups, and how can I support other research groups. So that was the time where I joined the IGBMC in Strasbourg in France. So I got at this time, I got a Marie Curie fellowship that helped me to pursue this line of research, and I was particularly interested in lysine acetylation in human cells. But this fellowship was also to develop facility and implement novel technologies for an institute. And at the time, so that's what I was both manager and a research fellow at the IGBMC, and I researched in 2 labs, while held by Laszlo Torra and Olivier Porquier, while running the facility at the same time. So it was very busy and rewarding as well. And this lysine acetylation project, basically we did perform a large-scale screening, identifying like several targets that had a specific function, mostly in genome stability maintenance, and I wanted to focus on this one for the next step. And this was quite well received at several conferences as well. So from the Strasbourg, I joined the Dunn School of Pathology and the lab of Fumiko Esashi, where again, I just wanted to keep looking at what is PTM doing in DNA repair and genome stability maintenance. And Fumiko is really establishing in this field, and she had all the tools to look at what would this acetylation doing for genome stability maintenance. So I joined her lab and conduct a research project here. But while doing this as well, the reason why I joined the Dunn School, this proteomics facility was also held in this department. So I was both doing my research again, but using this facility to conduct other proteomics projects in the lab, and also help other people from the department and in the university. And came the time where I really wanted to get more into an independent position, and also keep doing this proteomics in a more managerial role. And I was fortunate in 2020, position opened to lead a proteomics facility in a department of biochemistry, and that's where I moved, but I will tell you more about my role in a minute. And I must say that's the time where I felt a bit more settled as well after moving all over. And I also got a baby, and I took a maternity break as well before returning to the Department of Biochemistry a few years back now. So what is my role as a manager of Proteomics research facility? We still do research, but not full on our own research project, but we support research groups. So it's extremely collaborative, I would call it this way. And mostly we are scientific experts into mass spectrometry and proteomics, and we mostly focus on this part of the project. So what does it mean practically speaking? A research group will contact us and say, I would like to, let's say, understand what is this DNA repair machinery doing in certain conditions? So can you use mass spec proteomics to answer this question? So we will sit down together and discuss the biological question and design the experiment to address the question. And so what proteomics or mass spec based proteomics will help you answering is identified as molecular mechanism regulating cellular processes. So basically it can be anything, or you can address any sort of biological question. And proteomics is also wide in the sense like you can do it in several ways. So this can either be a single germ protein identification, or look at just map the whole cell proteome or organelle, or the organelle proteome of an organelle, sorry. But it's also the case when we do a lot of this project where we map protein interaction in a cell from, for instance, pull-down experiment coupled with mass specs as well. We also map post-translational modification, which I told you a bit about, which has been my area of expertise, and that could be phosphorylation or acetylation or ubicutylation, for example. This can be done in a qualitative way, but also quantitatively, where we're going to look at abundance changes across different conditions as well. And we also do structural proteomics, where you can look at the organization of protein complexes in a cell. And this can be done in any type of organism. So just saying take-home message, you can apply proteomics to a wide range of questions. And our user base is currently around 300 users across several departments in the university, so mostly academics, but we also support external academics and industry. So it's rather busy, but my role as a manager goes beyond also the scientific expertise, and it's a lot on communication. So besides supporting research, we also support training of scientists, and for instance, we can train scientists from the sample preparation to the data analysis of proteomic dataset. And here are a few pictures of these training activities. And we do have now a team of super users who have access to the facility. And this is alongside, obviously, the core staff of the facility. As a manager, this involves a lot of project discussion, experimental design, data analysis, interpretation, etc. But it's also about, advertising the facility to inform research groups of what's available here and how we can support research using proteomics. And mostly, I'm not alone in a facility, and along the sides of super users, we have a core staff, and I just want to acknowledge Vaishnavi. She's our postdoc research associate doing a fantastic job at the facility. So my role is obviously to supervise her activity, and also make sure she can progress in her career and look after her well-being as well. Importantly, the finance side of the facility, make sure the facility financially sustainable, and obviously we need to keep the facility up to date with latest technologies. In our case, this involves acquiring new instruments, mass spectrometers, so this involves applying for funding to get new equipment. And finally, there's a lab management part for health and safety. We're working on environmental sustainability, and most importantly is make sure the mass spec, I would say, I just draw a Lego, looks like a bit of a Lego box. So there is a part of engineering where, you know, you have to be a bit handy, and we look after those machines a lot, which are high maintenance and are key to run the Proteomics facility successfully. So in terms of skills required, so I just sorted, just classify into 4 groups. So obviously scientific expertise, the research skills acquired during this part, leadership management, communication is really important, and finally the finance side of it. So I just wanted to give you a few examples just supporting those skills, or what on my side I've acquired to fit into the skills. So obviously scientific expertise, this has been through my experience in research, doing mass spec in proteomics, really from the early start, from PhD to postdoc, and which has also some of this work being published in peer-reviewed journals. But it's also keep up to date with literature, seminar, attend seminar, conference, and be at the forefront with proteomics technology. And importantly, I think having worked with different institutions, being exposed to different research groups, it's all this biological knowledge acquired over these years, which helped me dealing with all this multidisciplinary research project as well. Moving to the leadership and the management work, so this, I must say, I've acquired more skills in managing research facilities, and this is alongside with the research skills where a lot of it is problem solving and be quick in taking decisions as well. But I'm not alone in running the facility, so part of this leadership is also managing and mentoring staff, including teaching and training scientists, and that's something I've been also very passionate on since my early stage during my PhD as well. I just wanted to mention the management course because I attended management courses, and beyond, you know, the experience you get in a field in a lab, I find it very helpful to attend those courses where you among other managers, and you learn about different management styles. So this is something that I've learned a lot from as well. Strategy is very important in problem solving and decision making. So I've been a member of strategic groups for research facility management, but also review of funding applications, which I find helpful to fit into those management skills. Importantly, communication. And so I've learned this a bit presentation at scientific conferences, participating into outreach activities. Importantly, even networking, social events have been very helpful to me, and in departments or outside the departments, staff management as well. And you learn a lot by working with different people on what's the most efficient communication skills when you receive feedback as well from your team. And against this goes along this mentoring in the lab, teaching and training scientists as well. And finally, the finance side, so which this bit I just find it a bit more difficult when you jump into this management role for research facilities where it's not something you will be trained on if you're not a computer in a lab or don't have your own funding. So having managed 2 different research facilities in different institutions with different costing models have helped me a lot in managing the finances of the lab. I wrote here manage your own funding, and this is related when I got my Marie Curie funding as well. This was quite helpful just to, you know, get what funding and how you can spend it efficiently to achieve a certain goal. And I think that's something that I'm sure take extracurricular activity, and I got into more this business mindset by conducting here at the university. We had this opportunity to do this research strategic consultancy project, which was very helpful as well. And I just want to finish here. Hope I'm not going over time. So challenges, yeah, I'm a specialized scientist, and while looking for independent position, I would say there are limited job opportunities, and I just took it when one came up, so I feel fortunate about this. Challenging, yes, and I think it's true for even research labs where you always need to get funding to upgrade instrumentation, in our case, which can be very costly. So this remains a challenge as well. But just what I've learned along the way, just self-reflect is important. I think in my case, step back, really understand what you want to do, and based on this, you can consult career services or attend career seminars like this one, for instance. Get your own funding that will give you maybe a bit of freedom just to develop skills, attend workshops and courses, network and speak to peers and senior colleagues. In my case, it's been very, very helpful over these years. And I think I want to end it here. Obviously, it's a short presentation, but I just want to share my contact detail, and you're very welcome to contact me on LinkedIn if you wish, or here's my email address. And all I want to say before we have the Q&A is best of luck to everyone for your career. I will now pass it on to the next speaker, and I want to thank everyone for your attention.
Cool, thank you, Marjorie. That was very good. Cool. Without further ado, we'll move on to the next speaker. So our second invited speaker is Joanna Gascoigne-Owens, who is the Head of Research Funding Development for Newcastle University. So Joanna gained a PhD in plant molecular biology and biochemistry at Sheffield University before securing her first job as an Assistant Strategic Research Manager at Imperial College London. Joanna moved out of London in 2008 and joined Newcastle University as Research Funding Development Manager for the Faculty of Science, Agriculture and Engineering before moving to her current role, which is Head of Research Funding Development in 2018. So in this role, Joanna leads and manages research funding development services to enable the university to maximise its research funding. So without further ado, we'll move on to Joanna. The slides look good, so take it away.
Great, thanks very much. Thanks everyone for coming. It's really great to be here today, and thanks for the invitation. So I'm going to talk about my research adjacent career, which is in research funding development. So what I want to cover today is to say a little bit about my role and how I got into it and why I got into it. I'll talk a bit about why I like my role and what important skills that are important in this role that can be transferred from a research role, and then make some points around that. And then I want to talk a little bit about the sorts of things we look for when we're recruiting into roles like this, because we often recruit people from research positions into these roles. And then at the end, just for a bit of fun, really, I want to talk a little bit about the career journeys of some of my colleagues and some of my friends as well. So I'm Head of Research Funding Development at Newcastle University. So I manage a team of 14 research funding development managers and senior research funding development managers. And our role as a team is to help the university and the researchers within that university to maximise our research funding to allow us to do the research that we want to do. And most universities would have similar positions to this now. And in terms of the role itself, you can see down the right-hand side of the slide a little bit of information about the sorts of things that we do, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that later. That you could sort of roughly divide the role into two parts. So the first part would be the hands-on side of things, so working with academic and other colleagues to help them to understand how research funding works and how to and enable them to successfully apply for it, to allow them to do the research that they want to do. And then the second part would be more strategic, so that would be around ensuring that the university is able to maximise its funding success, so doing things like managing the university's relationship with its key funders, making sure that our funders know what we're good at and what we do, but also knowing from the funders what's coming up in terms of funding, what's likely to be available, so that we can inform our researchers at Newcastle as well. So how I got into my role, you can see the journey laid out here. So I did my first degree in molecular biology and biochemistry at Durham University, and I moved. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the research project element of that. So moved directly into a PhD. That was in plant molecular biology and biochemistry at Sheffield University. And then, for reasons which I'll explain shortly, I decided that a research career wasn't for me. So I was really enjoying my PhD. I was passionate about research, but I decided that I wanted to be involved in supporting research rather than being hands-on doing the research. So while I was writing up my PhD, I was job hunting for that sort of role, so a research support role. And was really fortunate to be offered the position of assistant to the strategic research manager for the Faculty of Medicine at Imperial College London. And that was such a fortunate move for me because my manager, so the strategic research manager at the time, was really passionate about developing people's careers. So I got a really great mentor, a really great grounding in all sorts of things that were so useful to me going forwards in my career. Another stroke of luck was that 2 years after I started that position, Imperial College decided to create a new faculty. So they decided to create a new Faculty of Natural Sciences and to mirror the management structure of the Faculty of Medicine. So that meant that there was a position of strategic research manager available, and I was appointed into that role. And I had a great time in that role. It was because it was a new faculty, a lot of the research support related functions were doing new things. So for example, I set up faculty fellowship schemes, set up new research institutes, managed really large complex funding proposals, and I also managed our submission to the Research Excellence Framework, or REF, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. So I had a really great time in that job. But after around 2 years, so 4 years in London in total, I decided that I needed to move out of London. So again, hunting around for similar jobs because I'd really liked the job that I'd been doing. I was fortunate to be offered the position of Research Funding Development Manager at Newcastle University. So that took me home to the Northeast as well, which was an added bonus. And I had a great time in that role as well. I had a great 10 years supporting academic colleagues in understanding how research funding worked and understanding how to prepare a good research funding proposal. And then in 2018, Newcastle University decided to create a new position, which was Head of Research Funding Development, with the aim of drawing together all of the research funding expertise and positions within the university into a single team. To try and make things more effective and more efficient as well. So I was offered that position, which was great. So after a month after I started that position, I had a year of maternity leave. I came back from maternity leave, and after 3 weeks, we all went home because of the COVID pandemic and worked at home for many, many months. But I feel like now, that I've been doing the job for a while, I've kind of got to carrying out the job in a more normal way. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the really key decision point in my career, which was this point here. So the point at which I decided to move away from a hands-on research position into a research-related role. And as I said when I was explaining things, I'm really passionate about research. I really love it. I really enjoy doing my PhD, but I decided that I wanted to be in a research-related role rather than hands-on in the lab. And some of the reasoning behind that included things like I didn't really enjoy relying on other things to influence my success. So I didn't like, for example, coming into the lab and finding that someone had used all my chemicals, or that the equipment was broken and no one had reported it. Things like that just I found frustrating and slowed down progress. Also, if I'm honest, I wasn't very good at thinking laterally about new ideas. So I was good at executing experiments and carrying out research, but thinking up new stuff wasn't really my thing, and so I knew really at that point that an academic career path wasn't for me, because I didn't have that sort of thought process and mindset that would allow me to be successful at that. I also enjoy organising things, which I think fits well with my current role now, and I was also, one thing that I really wanted was career stability. So I could see the postdocs around me in the lab on short-term contracts, and finding that very stressful. And I decided at that point that I didn't want that I wanted to be able to apply for long-term job positions. So I made the move out of the lab into research initially into research management, and then into research funding. So some of the reasons why I like my role in research funding, and why I initially liked my role in research management more generally. So I'm really interested in research, so it allows me to stay close to that. And I like to see the big picture side of research as well, and the impacts that can have. I like helping others. I like working as part of a team. I like working behind the scenes to make things happen. I'm not bothered about being the figurehead for anything in particular. I like managing a team. So as I said, I have a team of 14 research funding development managers. I'm interested in them, and as Marjorie also said, I'm interested in developing them and developing their careers as well. I really like problem solving. So when things get complicated, whether that's a problem with staff or a problem with something that we're trying to do, I like problem solving around those things. I like representing the university. So for example, being the main contact point, managing our relationship with our funders. I really like managing large, complex projects. I like the variety that the job offers. And also I like the flexibility that comes with this sort of job. So some of the academic freedoms that come with an academic position, some of those also come with research services positions within universities. So we can get that work-life balance that maybe is more difficult in some other professions. So many skills from research or translate into research management, and also make you good at research management. And a lot of these skills are probably things that you're doing already. And you, if you chose this sort of career pathway, you'd be able to translate quite easily into it. So understanding research is really important. So understanding why it's important, having research in your blood, if you like, understanding how the research journey works, how the research life cycle works, the pressures on researchers who are trying to carry out that research. So they're your colleagues that you're working with day to day. And some of your scientific skills around asking the right questions, interpretation of guidance, thinking ahead, thinking logically, writing logically are all really important skills when it comes to helping people to prepare good funding applications. It's also really important to be a good team player, play your part in a team, develop really strong relationships with colleagues, do things right, and also manage your own workload and manage your own time. We'd expect all research services colleagues to be doing those sorts of things. So there's loads of skills that you've probably got already that would translate really well into a research adjacent career. And some things that I thought were important to say here. Moving into a research related career is a choice. It's not a failure at research. It can be it's a positive step forward in your career. And with that in mind a bit, in roles like this, you'd be an integral part of a team with academic colleagues or other research colleagues, technical colleagues, and so on when you're trying to develop a funding proposal. And we'd expect there to be parity of esteem within that team, so you'd be providing a particular skill set that nobody else had. And the research culture in that respect has improved greatly in the many years that I've been doing this type of work. I'd also say that nothing's ever forever. If you wanted to try out this sort of career and see if you enjoy it, it's not a one-way street. You can go back into something else if you decide that it isn't for you. There's a lot of choice in these types of roles, so it's a bit different to the specialist roles that Marjorie was speaking about. There's a lot of choice. For example, there is a wide range of types of role within university research services, but many of the roles are more behind the scenes, so they wouldn't necessarily be obvious until you start looking for them. We also, as I've mentioned earlier, these roles can give you some of the academic benefits of the sort of freedom of the way that you choose to work, and therefore a good work-life balance as well. Some of the things that we look for when we're recruiting people into these sorts of roles. So I've done a lot of recruitment into research management positions and research funding development positions for my team. And we've often recruited people direct from research roles, and there's some of the things that we look for there in the candidates. I've listed here in case it's helpful to people who are thinking of their next steps and maybe applying for something like this. So we're really looking for people who've applied specifically for this job and who've articulated why they want this job. So what we don't want to see is a generic application that has clearly been sent to any job they could find that was open that week. We really want a specific application, and also we want to understand why applicants have decided to move out of a research career, and for that to be a positive step for them. So what we don't want is that it's a drift or some kind of emergency, so they've run out of their position is running out and they haven't managed to get another postdoctoral position, something like that. We want it to be that we need them to articulate that that's a positive step forward for them in their career. We want to see them drawing on some of those experiences that I've talked about previously. So what have you done in your research role that you can translate into this role, and also any experience that they've tried to get specifically around research services. So have they tried to get any work experience or maybe some shadowing? Have they met with colleagues at their institution who work in these roles? Have they rung up the named contact on the job application to just talk a bit more about the position? We're looking out for all of those things. We're obviously looking for a well-written, clear, carefully prepared job application. If they can't do that with their own job application, I'm certainly not going to let them loose on somebody's research funding application. So we need that attention to detail. And we also need them to have looked through the job description and matched themselves and their skills with evidence to that job description. Otherwise, it's very difficult to invite people to interview if we haven't got those matchups made for us. So I hope that's helpful for anyone who's looking to apply for roles like this one in research services. So just to finish, I wanted to talk a little bit about some career journeys into research funding development. So on the next couple of slides, I've got the career pathways of some of my team members, just to give you a bit of an example of how people arrive at these roles. So we've had various people come to us from PhDs. So for example, we've got one member of the team who has a PhD in nutrition, then they worked in industry for a while, and now they're a research funding development manager in our team. Similarly, someone had a physics PhD, then worked in academic publishing for a few years, and then became a research funding development manager. Is now a senior research funding development manager, someone who's been a research group administrator previously, and then moved into the team. Someone with a biomedical sciences PhD, then started to work in university research services as a costings manager, so working out the costs of research funding proposals, then now a senior research funding development manager, and so on. So you can see that there's lots of different ways of arriving at essentially the same job. Many of them start from a research related background, whether that's a PhD or a related degree as well. In terms of the people that I did my PhD with, so we were quite a small cohort of people. 3 of us now work in university research services, myself included. 2 are environmental consultants, so they've reached higher accreditation in those skills. 1 is a conservation worker in Madagascar. 1 works for a non-governmental organisation. 1 works for the city council, and 2 have stayed in academia. So you can see the sort of proportions that we're looking at here. So 1's a senior lecturer and 1's a professor. So there's a whole range of different places that we've all ended up as well after finishing our PhDs in 2004. So that's all I wanted to say. Very happy to take questions in the question and answer session at the end, and also wanted to to thank you for your attention and to wish you all the best with your career choices that you choose to make. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much, Joanna. The questions are coming in, so there will be questions at the end. So we'll move on to the next speaker, or final speaker, Tim. So Tim Giles is a research facilitator at the University of Birmingham. Tim completed his PhD in molecular biology at the University of Nottingham before moving on to a postdoc role at the School of Veterinary Medicine and Science at Nottingham. And following these studies, Tim worked as a research facilitator within the College of Medicine and Health to support academics with grant applications. Tim now works as the professional services lead for research and training and development within this department, and his role is to support the delivery of career development support for clinical and non-clinical researchers within the life sciences in line with the Researcher Development Concordat. So Tim, I'll hand it over to you so the slides look good and we're good to go.
Cool, thank you very much. Okay, all good. Yeah, thank you very much for having me and that introduction. So yeah, I'm going to very quickly talk about my career to date and sort of my journey effectively. So I'll go straight in. I completed my master's at the Royal Veterinary College in 2010, then moved into a PhD at University of Nottingham. So I did my first postdoc started in 2014, and then a couple of life events along the way. Purchased the first house in 2015 and the first child soon after in 2017. And then with my first postdoc, I was quite lucky really, because it was 4 years long. So I know that postdocs can be quite a bit shorter than that. So I was generally quite fortunate. And during my PhD and postdoc, I sort of naively assumed, I guess, looking back, that my career trajectory would just go to lecturer, professor, nice and smooth, without any sort of real problems along the way. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. Now I know that that's actually quite a difficult route. The traditional academic career is quite a challenging one. So when my postdoc ended in 2018, we didn't have any more funding to do that particular project, so I was offered another postdoc in a different group for another 12 months. But because I had a new mortgage to pay, we had our first child, that uncertainty was a little bit of a concern for me. So I started to look around and see what else might be available. So as that postdoc was drawing to a close, I started to look at other roles, and one of those was research support. And one of the roles that was available at the time was a research facilitator role in Birmingham. You might be able to tell from my accent that I'm from Birmingham originally, so I've been commuting up to Nottingham, so that was a factor to consider as well. But before truly making that jump from academia, there was a few other factors I wanted to consider. So in true scientific fashion, I made a list. I put it all in a big spreadsheet and weighed up the pros and the cons. So starting off with the pros, having a career in academia was the one I thought I would have. I'd done my PhD, I'd done a postdoc. I just thought it was the natural progression to do another couple of postdocs, and then that would be it basically. I really enjoyed my research, and the thought of becoming a national expert or an international expert was a really cool idea, and it was something that I was really quite keen on. And I know that since then the academic lifestyle has become more pressured, but back when I was doing my postdoc, it was, and it still is effectively, compared to some different jobs, the academic lifestyle is quite a good one. There's a reasonably good work-life balance. There's quite a bit of flexibility. The cons, on the other hand, fixed-term contracts are a real issue, particularly for early career researchers. And as I mentioned, that sort of uncertainty was something that I really was quite concerned about. You can have 2 or 3 postdocs with no guarantee of a permanent contract at the end when funding runs out. There's a lot of other responsibilities in a career in academia that you don't necessarily know about when you're first starting as a postdoc, when you've got your head down doing your research, you're in the lab all the time. There's a lot of admin, bureaucracy, and meetings that only raise their head the further you get along in that career. There's an incredible pressure on funding. Funders have smaller and smaller pots of money, more people are applying. There's an incredible pressure on funding. The success rates are incredibly low. And also there's a massive pressure on publications, which even when I was a postdoc, it was something that I wasn't particularly keen on. I didn't like the constant pressure to write things, to get it submitted, and then to deal with all the rewrites that were needed. So I decided to take the plunge and move out of academia into research support. So the career trajectory line went off on a slight tangent. So I moved into a research facilitator role in 2018. We had our second child was born not long after that, at the end of 2019, and then not long after COVID hit. So with hindsight, it was probably quite fortunate that I had moved into professional services, because I was able to take my laptop home and just carry on working. Really, there was no change in my day-to-day role, really, apart from where before we had meetings in person, they were now on Zoom or Teams. So if I'd stayed in academia and been doing postdocs, then I don't know what would have happened. Would I have been able to go to the lab? So it's funny how things work with hindsight. And then a few years later, in 2022, I started in the role that I'm currently in as a researcher development manager. And also, as I was able to, during this role, I was able to do an apprenticeship in leadership and management last year. So we were asked to think about some of the sort of transferable skills that we might develop, or you might develop during a PhD and postdoc. And some of the ones that I've come up with here, this isn't an exhaustive list. There's only a few here, but so critical thinking. Anyone doing a PhD or postdoc, you'll be able to approach different complex problems and analyze the evidence and try and come up with innovative solutions to work around a problem or an issue you're having with a particular experiment. There'll be project management skills you'll deal with, so setting yourself goals, meeting your deadlines. You might have responsibility for some budget management in terms of ordering consumables, and potentially coordinating with any collaborators if your research group is spanning across other universities or with international partners. During your PhD and postdoc, you'll be presenting quite a lot. So you might go to conferences each year. You might be able to present at internal seminars. You'll be writing papers, conference abstracts. You'll develop the ability to convey your quite complex research to audiences that won't necessarily have as much of an understanding as you will. Also with data analysis, whether or not you work with quantitative or qualitative data sets, you'll probably dealing with large amounts of data, so you'll be able to use statistical tools and work with that. That will also be useful in other careers. Anyone working in research or in science will have setbacks. That might be experiments not working, papers being returned, applications for funding being rejected. And so learning to navigate these challenges and dealing with that really helps build your resilience and helps to build persistence and flexibility in terms of how you can overcome those. And then the last one really is collaboration and networking. So during PhD and postdoc, you'll be working with supervisors, colleagues in the lab, international collaborators, and this really hones your ability to work in teams, both small scale and larger scale, and to build professional relationships either with other academics or other stakeholders outside of academia. So I was asked how I got into the facilitator role, which I've touched upon. And so it's very similar to some of the roles that Joanna was describing, really. It's what I was doing was to identify research funding opportunities and to provide specialist knowledge and professional support for research proposal development. And a little bit later on in that role, I became the team's sort of go-to person for research and development. And I found the role really rewarding because you get to work with academics from idea conception to all the way to submission, and to help guide them through that process. You become sort of like the go-to person for advice on different funders and research strategies. So it's really rewarding to have that sort of role with quite senior academics sometimes. And you're right. So that means you're right at the heart of exciting new projects. And some of these projects might be really quite high impact projects, which might have a real difference. And it's also very rewarding to help people grow in their careers, particularly for early career researchers when applying for fellowships, for example. The work that research support services provide can make a real difference to them if it's their first application, and helping them to get onto the first step in their academic career. And then moving into the role that I've got now, particularly the work I was doing around research development when I was a facilitator, it just felt like a natural next step when this current role became vacant, because it built on everything that I enjoyed at the time when I was a facilitator and found rewarding. Supporting researchers, helping them to grow, and being part of their journey from idea conception to award. I'd already been guiding researchers through funding applications and proposal development, so stepping into a role where I could then shape the broader development and their personal development and their professional development made perfect sense. So now I get to identify the training needs of individuals, design programs that align with national frameworks such as the Researcher Development Concordat, which hopefully some of you will have heard of, and I get to lead recently created initiatives like the College of Medicine and Health's Fellowship Academy. So it's not just researchers that I get to support. I've also got a team. There's a team I manage. So I'm helping to develop professional services members as well. And I'm also sort of working around research culture. All of this contributes to research culture, which is a particularly exciting area to be working in at the moment because there's a lot of emphasis being placed on it. Joanna mentioned REF. There's been an increased weighting for research culture and the research environment for the upcoming REF submission. So there's a lot of work being done in that area now. So it's quite an interesting one to work in. And then finally, because the role I'm in, we also sort of support ECRs and direct them into other careers outside of academia they might want to consider. So again, there's only 4 options here. This is a very small list, but there's loads of different opportunities for people to go into. Universities are quite an easy step because you're already familiar with the university sort of academic lifestyle, academic working environment, but there's loads of different roles you can go into. So there's research support like I got into, research finance, research impact. Any sort of grant will have project grant, program grant, will need professional services support. So you might become a project manager or a program manager. If you're working more closely aligned with medicine, then it could become more involved with clinical trials and become a clinical trial manager. If you prefer the more operational side of things, then you could become like an operation manager, heads of operation, which can go become quite senior within a college and a university. If you still love working in the lab, but you just don't like the academic side of it, then consider working in industry. There's pharma companies like AstraZeneca, GSK, which operate huge labs, which you can go into and still do the actual science, but it's just not with that in that academic context. There's government work, so you can work for councils directly for the government or in different funding bodies like UKRI. And similarly with the public organisations, so that could again be funders like Wellcome, for example, or again, because my background at the moment at least is more medicine and health, you could work for something like the NHS. The NHS is a huge employer, and there's all different areas that someone could go into as part of that institution. And then finally, just to conclude really, any role that we take on in our career path, constantly learning and developing new skills. There's an ever-changing workplace environment, especially recently. I mean, who knows where we'll be in 5 years' time with the increase in AI, how that will impact on some of our different roles. The skills that we're learning, very often highly transferable. You just need to think about it in a slightly different context to what you might be doing it in now. And what I would say is, your career might not take the expected path that you think it is now. There might be some ups and downs, but you will be learning throughout that process. And what I'd say is, don't be afraid to try something new. You will be learning and growing as an individual, and yeah, that's kind of me done really. So yeah, the best of luck for everyone, and I'm happy to take any questions with the rest of the panel.
That's great. Thank you very much, Tim. So we have a few minutes remaining for questions. We have had a few come in, so I'll just wait for the other speakers to join back. Yep. Cool. So yeah, we have time for 2 or 3 questions. I'll probably ask maybe a question each. That's okay. So there's a couple of questions for Marjorie. So what are your roles? You were sort of as a researcher or postdoc, as well as being a facility manager or working within a facility at the same time. And there's questions about how that works, the specifics for funding, so how that role was split between the sort of facility side and also your own research side, and how that works for you.
Basically, the funding allowed me. The funding is my fellowship involved to develop the facility, and so I was expected to fill in basically into this role. I had a research assistant as well, so I was not on my own. So it's just also about managing someone to help me fulfill this role. But I did manage quite well, just in between the two, and it was not very much of an issue. Obviously, you put more hours into the day just to fill it in, but it was not too much of an issue for me. Yeah.
Okay, cool, thank you. So next question, there's a couple of questions for Joanna about how much in your sort of various roles, how much did it help to have that research background, and whether it was more the soft, in inverted commas, the softer skills of that research background that helped, or whether you ever used whether you require any specific knowledge from your sort of degree and previous research, and how that helps with your current roles.
I think the helpful part isn't necessarily the specific research in a particular discipline, because we'd be working with researchers and academic colleagues from right across the university, and increasingly in an interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary context as well. So it isn't so much the specific expert knowledge in a particular area, it's more the helpful thing for us is more understanding research. So understanding why it's important, understanding how you design a good research project, understanding about data and how you manage data and how you use data, understanding the research life cycle. So that sort of stuff's really important. But then also understanding the people you're working with, so understanding what the researchers need to get out of this, why it's important to them, the pressures on them, the different kind of needs that they have. So I think I would say it is the softest stuff that is more important than the specifics. But a specific understanding of how research works is also really important and can be a big advantage when you're applying for this type of role.
Cool, thank you. I had a quick question for Tim, because you mentioned the research concordat and there's these 10 days continuing professional development. And your role and your experience, how much of an uptake, and how much do you think you can use that? Because there's some mention about like shadowing particular roles or trying out different roles that may not be part of your research. Where you are in Birmingham, I guess it depends where you are. Is that something that you encourage the research staff to take up as far as those 10 days?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually let people have up to 12 days for their own development, so taking it a little bit further. But we absolutely encourage people to use that. As you progress in your career, you'll get less and less time for yourself. I know it might seem impossible now when you're in the thick of it and doing lab work, etc. But as you do progress, there is less time available for yourself to work on your own skill set. So make the most of those days. Check with your own university if they've signed up to that. There is a list available, so you'll be able to see if your university has signed it, and then you have those 10 days as your right to spend on development skills as you will. That can include traditional training workshops, that can include going to a conference, presenting a seminar, it can include mentoring, shadowing, but yeah, make the most of those days, absolutely.
That's great, thank you. One very quick question, and this is sort of more general. So it seems like all three of you are taking on some sort of management or managerial elements to your roles. Is that something that is developed naturally, or is that something you specifically wanted to look at as you progressed in your career? And so alongside that, there was some mention of management courses. Do you think those courses are vital or critical to that developing management skills? Yeah, I guess we'll start with Joanna, and then
yeah, so it happened to me, I suppose, by accident. So I came into research management quite early when it was becoming a thing that more and more universities had. And so to start with, we were one-man bands across the sector. Really, there was one person maybe in each faculty, for example. So there wasn't really the prospect of team management. And then the value of those roles was recognised, there's more funding became available, so those teams started to grow. So I hadn't really thought about it as a thing that I would want to do, but I did enjoy it. So as the team started to grow, that's when I started to take on the training, which I would say is valuable. I think it's probably more valuable when you're actually doing it than as a theoretical thing. So Tim might have more views on this, but I probably wouldn't prioritize right now if you haven't got anyone that you need to manage, and maybe think about other development opportunities instead. But very early on in your management experience, I would recommend to do some training because it is useful.
Well, great. Tim, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, just to echo that, really, I think it is something that when you're working on the job, so to speak, doing that training, I think it is better, because it's one thing doing it in advance and having the theory behind it, but until you can actually practice it and implement it, it doesn't quite have the same impact. And I'd say, even if you say it in academia, as you progress, you'll naturally become a manager as of a research group of PhD students, postdocs. Generally, as you progress in any career, you will have some elements of management. So it's something that, yes, I think training is important, but yeah, like Joanna said, only really when you are a manager or have just started or just about to.
Yeah, fine, Marjorie.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it in my talk. In my case, I looked for is management responsibilities, as part of managing a facility and provide support for researchers. And I did find, I think some of the institute I was in Strasbourg, they did offer those management courses for postdoc, for instance, and we could also attend. I did find it quite helpful indeed, because you have a management style in place, even that you put in practice, but being exposed or discuss it with other managers sometimes are also helpful, and you do practical cases, you are filmed, and they feedback on your style and communication skills as well. So I did find it quite helpful. Obviously, I agree with Joanna and Tim, you need both, or in practice, that's where you learn the most, but having both in parallel is quite helpful.
Okay, cool, thank you. I think we'll finish the Q&A there. Thank you to all the speakers, and thank you for the questions that came in. Apologies, we're a little bit over time, but it's quite a good session, I feel. I'd also really like to thank Lucy in the background, who I think you heard pop up at one point. So those in the background really make these webinars happen. So I'd like to give a shout out to them as well. We do welcome suggestions for future topics for the Biochemistry Focus series. There is more information on the Biochemical Society website. And if you'd like to submit a proposal, if there's a particular topic you'd like to speak about, do get in contact via that form on the website. The additional things are all of our webinars are listed on the website. But also, if you've missed any of the over 100, I think now, webinars that have taken place, they are available on the Biochemical Society YouTube. The details will come up on the screen in a minute. And the recording from today's webinar will be available in the next couple of weeks once we've got the sort of transcript ready and going for that. I would like to sort of highlight that it is more important than ever to stay connected with fellow molecular bioscientists, Biochemical Society's community of researchers and specialists is quite broad now, so we have quite a big membership, and you can take advantage of a lot of key benefits, including discounted registration fees. There's lots of grants available as well, and there's also access to some of their journals. So do please visit their website to find out more. And with that, I would like to thank you all for attending. Thank you again to our speakers. It's been very informative, and have a really, really nice day. So thank you. Bye-bye.